Welcome to Health or Consequences, podcast series devoted to healthcare and public health issues that runs under the Codcast label on Commonwealth Beacon. I'm Paul Hattis, co-host from the Lown Institute with John McDonough from the T.H. Chan Harvard School of Public Health. And we're very happy today, in a timely way, to have with us the state's Division of Insurance Commissioner, Michael Caljouw. Now we'll hear from Mike in a minute about the work of the division, but I want you to know he comes to that position with a very extensive background in health insurance, both in government and in the private sector. Commissioner, welcome, and please tell our podcast audience a little bit about your background, if you would, before assuming your current position.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul and John, and it's an honor to be joining you today. There's always so much to talk about in healthcare, and this time period is no different. So happy to reflect back on events that are happening every day in our space. A little bit about my background, you referenced it. I started as Commissioner of Insurance in October of 2024, and it's actually my second stint at the Division of Insurance. I worked in the private sector for more than 20 years, but had worked at the Division of Insurance way back when as General Counsel in the late 90s, early 2000s. Going back a little further, I'm the youngest of 6 kids who grew up in Boston. I went to Boston Public Schools. And the reason why I've always been interested in public policy and public service was that I saw firsthand the impact that laws can have and regulators can have on family affordability, opportunity, and access. My family growing up struggled financially. And I think it sort of taught me 2 things early on. One was my mom was a superhero, like most moms are. You know, she really kind of held us together and did a great job. We never felt like we did not have resources. We always got by somehow. But I knew early on that I wanted to work on issues where law and policy can affect change. So after graduating from high school and going to college in Massachusetts and then law school, I went to work at a law firm. I paid off my student loans through that time and then spent a decade in state government. During that time, a big highlight for me was being able to work on major insurance reform. And during that time, I got a lot of experience understanding how regulators in particular can work to ensure stable, affordable, and strong insurance markets across different lines of insurance. I then spent the next chunk of time, and it goes by really fast in retrospect, working at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. I had the chance there to work across the healthcare stakeholder groups with some of the brightest and most committed people. And it was a great opportunity for me, and it truly cemented for me the importance of public policy and how what we do here in government needs to contemplate the real world implications of our efforts. So it's great to be back in public service. The ability to solve, or at least try to solve, large-scale policy problems is a particularly compelling special sauce of state government, especially now. And it's a unique opportunity to give back when many of us kind of feel powerless or kind of at risk by events that are beyond our control. Being able to work within this administration and across the legislature and with our stakeholder communities was a real unique opportunity to work with a group of committed people to try to problem solve.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. This is John McDonough. Thanks again for joining us. It's a pleasure and honor to have you with us today. So let's dive into one of the important issues. We learned that Governor Healy has announced that your agency is issuing new regulations to prohibit insurers from requiring prior authorization for many routine and essential services. Can you give us a little bit of the background of how this happened, what's going to happen with it, how's it going to roll out, and what real improvements are you hoping to see as a result of this?
Thanks, John, and thanks again for having me. Our work started on this issue back in 2024. In really my first week as commissioner, I launched a series of listening sessions across the marketplace, hearing from consumers, hearing from providers, and from health plans and other affected individuals around healthcare affordability. During those sessions, I heard directly the concerns and comments raised about prior authorization. And one of the things that I noticed was that the state had never really examined the market practices in that area. So we launched a market-wide examination of prior authorization in Massachusetts. It was the first time the Commonwealth had studied the extent and variation of prior auth practices in the Massachusetts market. And again, I think it's important for listeners who aren't familiar with authorizations. It's a check that insurers use from time to time that they require providers to send to them prior to services being rendered or drugs being dispensed on behalf of a patient. So we went through in a painstaking way the collection and analysis of data submitted by 14 insurance companies. Those insurance companies offer products in the fully insured market, and our data set was the 2023 and 2024 time period. In our exam report, after we concluded the collection and analysis, found that there were substantial differences in how and when insurance companies required prior authorization across the Massachusetts market. It further showed that there was an ample opportunity for streamlining and standardization of prior authorization. Patients in the healthcare system itself could benefit from greater efficiencies, and insurers could employ a reformed set of practices so that it promoted high quality, cost-effective care while still guarding against fraud, waste, and abuse. The governor announced our efforts about 10 days ago, and we're really excited to carry forward on these efforts. We have a public hearing in mid-February on the 19th, and we urge everybody to participate since we want to create and make sure that we ensure a regulatory approach that reduces administrative burden, improves patient access to care, and can really improve the healthcare system in important ways. The governor noted at that press event that the regulation should be seen as the first step to addressing many of the challenges that exist within the healthcare system. And I should note that the insurance companies have taken a significant step with their commitment to this reform. I think it'll be important to see that same level of commitment to reform across all stakeholders, because there's other examples of administrative waste and administrative inefficiencies that will need to be taken so that we can adopt a better way of doing business at a time when we need to really be looking at everything. I'd also note that that regulatory hearing will be very important to us because we're going to continue to review the market. We're asking insurers to annually review their prior authorization service list, survey patients about their own experiences, and that will give us at the state additional data to evaluate progress so that we can continue to reduce waste and improve the patient experience. And we'll also keep in mind whether or not we need to refine the regulations in the future if there are issues that merit correction.
Do you have a target date when you hope this is locked in and happening?
It's a great question. Let me start by talking about my goal on the regulations. I would hope to have regulations finalized sometime in late winter, early spring. And that will contemplate an implementation period for the insurance companies, which will be longer than that. These authorization practices didn't happen overnight, and it will take the insurance companies a while to do this correctly. And the last thing we want to do is announce a series of completed reforms when the work is still happening. I'd say it's a 2026 landscape, and it should not really require a lot more time than that. But again, it will take a good deal of collaboration between all the stakeholders to nail that time period down. I do want to be careful about working correctly with the stakeholders. Not everyone is in the same position or have the same amount of resources to be able to make changes quickly. And at the same time, we want to make sure patients can get the benefit of the changes as soon as they practically can.
Thanks. So moving on to a larger role that you have as insurance commissioner. So lots of consumers hope that your main priority is helping consumers, but one of your major obligations is making sure that the insurance companies stay functional and financially solvent so that they're able to meet the needs that people put on them. I recall 26 years ago, around this same month, when Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare almost went bankrupt. It went into state receivership. And I think for most consumers, it was a big shock and people didn't quite understand. And we're hearing a lot of chatter and talk these days about the financial difficulties of the insurance industry across the country, but very much in Massachusetts. How concerned are you about the stability and solvency of the health insurance system in the state right now?
Thank you for that question, John. And I'll reflect back to start with the fact that I was actually at the Division of Insurance 26 years ago when those events occurred, and it was a great way to get grounded in the importance of solvency. If an insurance company is not able to pay the claims for the patients that they have, or if we're looking at an auto insurance company or a homeowner's insurance company, it's really the fundamental consumer protection that we at the Division of Insurance have to watch out for. Obviously, I can't answer with any specificity on that question. I would note that the division's primary mission is to monitor the solvency of all of our licensees to promote a healthy, responsive, and willing marketplace for consumers across all lines. Our financial surveillance and company licensing division continuously monitors the financial condition of insurance companies through audits and examinations of an awful lot of data that they are required to file with us. In fact, I think it's a model for how a complex set of organizations should interact with government. And we've done it now for close to 40 years with that level of interaction on financial data. It helps the division catch early warning signs of financial trouble and address issues ahead of time so that the company does not reach that level of financial problems. I guess I'd also note that we're really fortunate to have some of the best health insurance companies in the country. And as a point of comparison, we have a lot of choice and competition in our market. We have 8 insurers in the ACA market. That's twice as many as, for example, Maine has. And they, in fact, have lost 5 marketplace competitors in the last 2 years. We're watching really closely these issues. Health insurers are really feeling strong financial headwinds across the country. And it is a good example of why strong insurance regulation matters to consumers. But beyond that, I will have to, I think, punt on the specifics.
Commissioner, let me turn to another oversight role that your division has, which is when one insurer decides it wants to acquire another, which is now an active issue in our marketplace because Mass General Brigham Integrated Health System, which includes the MGB health plan, is seeking to acquire Fallon Health from Central Massachusetts, which will add some consolidation in the insurance market if that purchase goes forward. Wonder if you could share your thoughts about that particular proposal, both from the perspective of what will be the impact on the health insurance market per se, potentially from such an acquisition, but also even the context of here's Mass General Brigham, an integrated healthcare system already quite large on the provider side, having an insurance presence, and now acquiring additional insurance business. If you have any viewpoint about it as a whole system just growing larger.
Thank you for the question, Paul. And I want to preface my remarks by saying that ultimately I will be the adjudicator of a decision on any potential merger. So I want to be really circumspect in how much I say here. So let me take it up a level. I also have the benefit of not having anything filed before the Division of Insurance. So when I'm commenting on this, it's not with any specifics in mind for this particular transaction, but rather kind of the general alignment or how we think about the law and insurer mergers overall. We have a very clear process for evaluating proposed transactions between insurers. The acquiring party must file something called a Form A filing with the Division of Insurance. It includes the key terms of the transaction, disclosures for consumers, information about the applicant, funding and financial statements, and any plans for material changes to either of the involved insurers. We then create a cross-functional team to review what gets filed with us. Our finance and legal teams, our Healthcare Access Bureau, work with the parties, look at the transaction, and review the filing in detail. And then ultimately, there's a public hearing, which is a unique part of the law that's required before any final decision is made. I think that process has worked really well in other transactions to ensure that the public's consumer protections, the solvency protections, the long-term structure for a vibrant market participant or participants continues to follow post-merger. But I think the proof will be in the pudding as to what comes before us. I would tell you, I do appreciate the role that both of those players already make in today's market. With the right leadership and priorities, there's a real deep and abiding tradition of service excellence at MGB, NFL, and that has helped ensure that Massachusetts patients come first. Those entities, for example, were really quick to embrace changes around prior authorization reform, as an example, putting patients before anything else, but making sure that it's done in a balanced way. I think we'll see that in any filed transaction, but I don't want to predict any behavior.
Does the fact that the acquiring party is also the largest provider in the state have any direct consequence or context for your evaluation?
I would hearken back to Professor McDonough's earlier question about solvency. It's always a good thing to make sure that the Massachusetts marketplace has strong and financially stable participants in that market. And I guess that's what I would probably want to go as far as saying.
So all across the country, people are concerned and talking about affordability. in particular the affordability of healthcare and health insurance, and absolutely true in Massachusetts as well. Just recently, the governor announced the creation of a 30-member affordability working group to develop concrete proposals to reduce costs. I remember when I was a rep, I had a rule of thumb, never have more than 9 members on a group if you want to get anything real out of it, because 30 is quite a large number to try to manage. Do you have your own sense of what single or several reforms would actually make a difference? There are lots and lots of ideas out there, and some of them can happen and won't really produce very much, and some of them can't happen and might actually make something work. Do you have your own favored idea about if we can just get this done, we're going to tackle this, and we know, or are you not clear what you think can work?
The working group was just announced, so obviously I can't predict too much about its future behaviors or outcomes. I want to start, though, by reminding people about why the group is needed, why we need to tackle change in the first place. Costs are way too high. People are paying too much for healthcare, period. On average, the cost of healthcare for a family is nearly $30,000 a year, and it's growing at a rate faster than inflation, labor costs, household income. Cities and towns are feeling it. They're really feeling it. They're having to make impossible budget decisions around their own operations, some considering additional layoffs of workers or asking voters to increase taxes. I think recently the Boston Public Schools, for example, announced that they're anticipating $175 million health insurance cost impact. So clearly we have to solve this crisis, and we need system level thinking to tackle what is a system level set of problems. I'm excited. I tend to be an optimist, so I'll say that right off the bat. I do think that under the team's leadership and with the governor's guidance, there will be a sense of folks rowing in the same direction, and we'll need stakeholders to embrace that change. Simply put, I think folks have to leave behind their provincial viewpoints and give up something. The spirit of collaboration that we are seeing in prior authorization is going to need to be met as examples in this discussion. But I've personally seen, and this is probably evidence just that I'm getting old now, but I've seen major insurance reform take root here when people predicted that it was not going to happen. We enacted meaningful workers' compensation reform, and Representative McDonough was involved in those debates 30 years ago. We've enacted auto insurance market reform 15 years ago. And those markets have both shown a lot of success because of those reforms. Our mass auto market is among, if not the most competitive in the country. We have 40 insurance companies now writing private passenger auto insurance, and that number was single digits 15 years ago. And rates are much more attractive than they were at that time for consumers to be able to shop around. Similarly, in workers' comp insurance, we're seeing decreases in workers' compensation rates of nearly 15% decrease in 2024, and we saved consumers $76 million last year in workers' comp by rejecting a rate increase at that stage. And in both cases, Massachusetts has been a leader in market reforms. That policy change happened because the market actors, the stakeholders, got together and were willing to give up something in that discussion. We're going to need to have that same spirit of collaboration. And frankly, I think there are ways that we can accommodate change and make sure we continue to thrive. It's not going to be easy. It's certainly not. Our partners in DC, or what used to be our partners in DC, aren't certainly making it any easier. They're making it harder. But I'm encouraged also by some of the market innovation that I'm seeing just at the Division of Insurance. We have new health insurance products coming to the Massachusetts market this year with no deductibles or co-insurance, which help patients find their way to higher quality care with lower copays if you go to certain doctors. I think those are examples where the status quo needs to change and we need to embrace those types of reforms. And there are going to be others like that, but people are going to have to leave their silos and come together.
Commissioner, in last year's review of by your agency of insurance company submissions in the so-called merge market, individuals and small groups, you had interactions with those companies that led to ultimately lower approved rate increases than what they had initially proposed. How did you accomplish that? And did you learn anything from that process back and forth? And can this be something that we think about happening going into the future, especially as cost pressures continue to mount? And generally, how do you feel about those kinds of agency powers in light of what HPC and CHI are doing more generally to try to help us achieve a more affordable healthcare system?
That's a great question, and I appreciate the opportunity to answer it. I was able to start my tenure as Commissioner of Insurance at a particularly important time period. The legislature had just passed new language which required the Division of Insurance to factor in affordability in our review of rates. And I think that impressed upon me the importance of that work. It was critical to me to look at the affordability of our health insurance filed products and rates. And we started with cost sharing, the amount that an individual pays out of pocket when they go to receive a particular service or try to get a drug. And I looked at the data. We have a lot of data in Massachusetts, and we're lucky that we have partners like CHIA and the HPC that churn out some best-in-class research on the topic. What we don't have a lot of is action. And so I wanted to make sure that we looked at the data, and in looking at the data, we found that in the recent period, a patient's share of cost was going up too quickly. And annual deductibles charged to our patients were rising by nearly $200 per person. So we decided, or I did, to limit the amount that insurers could charge patients in copays and deductibles and capping the growth of cost share year over year. Our insurers have embraced that reform. We're going to continue that this year. And those are important protections so that patients don't self-ration care because it costs too much. But that only responds to the individual cost share side of the ledger. Our regulatory staff, supported by a great team of actuaries, pored over rate filings with the goal of ensuring that we meet our statutory duty of reviewing filed rates. And that work led to about $70 million in total savings for consumers from the previously filed rate process. It's painstaking, it's long work. In some cases, it can be contentious, but it's super important. I would love to expand on that in other ways and look at other statutory authorities that exist at the HPC, for example, to help consumers every day and root out medical costs across the board, or at least try to limit them, work on administrative efficiencies. But as a reminder, 90 cents of the premium dollar is made up of medical and pharmaceutical expenses. And if we're not tackling those root costs, we're not actually really doing our job. And this is where I think the affordability working group is going to play a really important role moving forward.
So final question, Commissioner. And thank you again for joining us. It's a pleasure to be with you and to hear from you. So let's turn to the Trump administration a little bit.
Do we have to?
They are putting forward their ideas about how to reform healthcare and make it better. And some of it sounds a lot like very old ideas, like short-term health insurance that a lot of people, myself included, refer to as junk insurance, but they're intending to push that. They're also pushing some novel ideas that we haven't heard of before around health reimbursement arrangements, and in particular, something called individual coverage health reinsurance arrangements, which is unpleasantly called ICRAs. Do you see any value in terms of what's coming on these ideas from Washington, D.C., and anything that might be helpful or useful here in Massachusetts?
I appreciate the question, and I wish we were in a position where we weren't needing to address that topic, because healthcare is so complicated and hard already that our colleagues in DC are making things even harder every day. And I'd add that I don't think that the Trump administration's ideas coming out of Washington are going to do one damn thing to help consumers in Massachusetts. There's a reason why those consumer protections existed in the first place, and I'd hate to see them upended. We are fortunate in Massachusetts to have really strong state laws to fall back on. We're one of the only 5 states that require individuals, for example, to have minimum creditable coverage. And I think many of the junk plans that the Trump administration would like to promote wouldn't even come close to meeting those requirements. It's important to note, insurance at its core is a contractual promise. In exchange for premiums, there'll be a future payout for agreed upon risk. And it's our role to make sure that insurers hold up that promise to consumers. But we don't need scam insurance products to come onto the market to do that. And while we may need to always review our laws, incredibly work hard on providing even more guardrails, we want to make sure that consumers know about the product that they're getting, the promise that they're getting, and they're actually going to get the bargain that they want or need when they need the insurance. Our consumer services team is on the watch. We provide consumers with accurate insurance information, not fake news coming out of DC. And we urge people to go online at mass.gov/DOI if they have any questions. If they see something that looks too good to be true, it probably is. And so I am on the wall, and I'll make sure that we do not lessen our standards coming out of DC.
Well, Commissioner, those are for John and I don't think I'm speaking inappropriately in saying we appreciate your standing up tall to want to protect the insurance buying customers of Massachusetts, and really appreciate your time talking with John and I today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, Commissioner Caljouw, for joining John and I today. Appreciate our listeners joining us as well. We'll look forward to being back with you next month.